Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we sift through the noise to bring you the insights that truly matter. Today, we're getting into a topic that's, well, everywhere. Artificial intelligence. It feels so new, right? Cutting edge. But what if I told you the idea of intelligent machines? It actually goes back thousands of years. We're embarking on a deep dive into the legal, the ethical, and the policy side of AI, and we'll be focusing quite a bit on the European approach, which is really comprehensive. Our guide for this is an incredible resource, the Cambridge Handbook of the Law, Ethics, and Policy of Artificial Intelligence. It just came out in 2025, packed with insights from, well, experts across loads of different fields. So our mission today, let's cut through the hype, let's help you understand not just what AI is, but how it's really reshaping our world, and crucially, how governments are trying to govern it. Get ready for some surprising facts, I think, and hopefully a truly well-informed perspective by the end. Okay, so let's unpack this history first. You said AI isn't entirely new. Most people think, computers, Silicon Valley. But
Yeah.
you're saying it goes way back. Like, how far back are we talking? Well, you can trace the basic idea of automata, these self-operating machines that act kind of human all the way back to antiquity. Think about Greek myths like Talos, the giant bronze man supposedly made by Hephaestus.
Right, to protect Europa. It's a powerful image of an artificial guardian.
Exactly. And then moving from myth to something real, there's the Antikythera mechanism around 200 BC.
Yes, an astonishing device,
Yeah.
often called the first analog computer.
Used to predict planets and eclipses. It's mind-boggling for that era.
It truly is. And this drive to create intelligent, or at least automated, machines didn't just stop there.
Right, you fast forward to the Middle Ages, Ismail al-Jazari.
Ah, yes, Al-Jazari. Around 1206, an incredible inventor from Mesopotamia, sometimes called the father of robotics. His book described how to build all sorts of automated devices, musical automata, drink-serving waitresses, quite advanced for the time.
Wow, and then later things like the Mechanical Turk in the 18th century.
The Mechanical Turk, yes. A classic example. It seems like an intelligent chess-playing machine.
But it was famously a hoax, right? A person hidden inside.
Precisely. It simulated intelligence, but it also reminds us about deception. Sometimes the AI magic is just, well, a clever human behind the curtain. A good lesson even now.
That's a really useful perspective. So seeing it historically helps us avoid getting caught up in just the hype.
Exactly. What's fascinating, and connecting it back to today, is how this long view helps us see AI isn't this completely alien phenomenon. It's vital to remember AI is, but one of many technologies. Treating it as something utterly unique can be problematic.
Why problematic?
Well, because we might overlook lessons from how we've governed other complex technologies in the past. And it can distract us from AI's actual building blocks, the software, the data, the physical hardware, the data centers, which are concrete and ultimately governable.
Okay. So focus less on the magic and more on the mechanics and the impact.
Yes, the focus shouldn't just be the tech itself, but the values we as a society want to uphold and protect through the governance of that tech.
That's a critical distinction. So, okay, with that history in mind, let's get into how today's AI actually, well, how does it think or learn?
Well, fundamentally, AI is a research program. The goal is creating computer-based agents that show intelligence. You might hear terms like strong AI versus weak AI. John Searle's concepts.
Strong versus weak AI, right? Strong AI is like a real mind, and weak AI is just a tool.
Essentially, yes. Strong AI proposes that a properly programmed computer is a mind it understands. Weak AI sees it as a powerful tool for studying the mind, but not a mind itself. Today, most AI systems we interact with rely primarily on two core capabilities: machine learning ML and machine reasoning MR.
Okay, ML and MR. I find this distinction really helpful. Can you break down machine learning for us? Make it concrete.
Absolutely. Think of machine learning ML as AI's gut instinct. It's like Daniel Kahneman's system, like thinking fast, intuitive. It learns patterns directly from huge amounts of data without needing explicit rules for everything.
Okay, like examples.
Everyday things. Your email spam filter, learning what looks fishy, recommender systems on streaming sites.
Like people who watched Pulp Fiction also liked Kill Bill.
Exactly that. Or grocery stores analyzing buying habits to taste products. That's ML spotting patterns.
Right. And you mentioned something called the Menace program with matchboxes.
Ah, Menace. Yes, wonderful early example. A physical tic-tac-toe machine built from matchboxes and colored beads, or marbles. Each matchbox represented a game state. The beads inside represented possible moves. It learned by adjusting the number of beads based on wins and losses. If a move led to a loss, you removed that bead. If it led to a win, you added beads for the moves made.
So it learned from rewards.
Precisely. It physically embodied learning from feedback, balancing, exploring new moves versus exploiting ones that worked before.
Fascinating. So if ML is the fast, intuitive system, what about machine reasoning, Marar?
MR is more like System 2 thinking. It's deliberate, logical, driven by knowledge. Here, the AI uses symbolic rules, facts, constraints to deduce answers.
Okay, so less pattern spotting, more rule following.
In a sense, think about predicting, say, optimal payroll policies based on detailed tax laws. That requires reasoning through rules. Or solving complex satisfiability problems.
Satisfiability problems. What's a practical example of that?
Imagine trying to pick a vegan restaurant for a group where everyone has different constraints. One wants quiet, another wants lively, specific allergies, budget limits. A satisfiability solver finds a solution, the restaurant that meets all those conditions simultaneously. It's about finding consistency within complex rules.
Got it. And you mentioned MR is inherently explainable.
Yes, that's a key difference. With MR, you can usually trace the logical steps it took. You can see why it reached a certain conclusion based on the rules it was given.
Okay, that makes sense. But with ML, the pattern-based one, what happens when we can't see the why? That famous black box problem.
Exactly. That brings us to a major challenge, especially with deep learning models, which are a type of ML, the black box problem. Often, even the designers don't know the exact step-by-step reasoning for a specific output. We understand the general process, but not the specifics of that decision.
And that lack of understanding is a problem.
A big one. It leads to the whole field of explainable AI, or XAI. There's a critical need to understand why an AI system gives a particular answer, especially when decisions impact people's lives, loans, jobs, medical stuff, or critical industrial processes.
And these systems can make mistakes, right? Or be biased.
Definitely. Errors or biases can creep in from multiple places. The data used to train them might reflect societal biases, or there could be limitations in the model itself, faulty assumptions made during programming, or just plain coding errors.
It feels like there's a deeper question here, too, about whether just processing information is the same as understanding.
There is. It touches on philosophical ideas like John Searle's Chinese room argument.
The Chinese room? Remind me.
It's a thought experiment. Imagine someone in a room who doesn't know Chinese, but has a massive rule book for manipulating Chinese symbols. They receive questions in Chinese characters through a slot, follow the rules to manipulate symbols, and send answers out. To an outsider, it looks like the room understands Chinese.
But the person inside doesn't understand a word.
Exactly. Searle argued this shows that computation, just manipulating symbols according to rules, isn't sufficient for genuine understanding. It suggests there can be no strong AI just through computation.
So for you listening, it's like asking if your calculator understands math or just follows rules to get the right number.
A good analogy. It highlights the gap between simulating intelligence and actually possessing it.
Okay, so AI isn't just tech. It has these complex inner workings, potential biases, even philosophical questions. What does this all mean for society? How deep does its influence go?
Oh, it's deeply embedded. AI affects and is affected by our whole environment, for better and sometimes for worse. One reason it spread so fast is perhaps this societal belief in innovation as an inherent good, a sort of technology solutionist mindset.
Meaning we assume new tech will automatically solve problems.
Sometimes, yes. There's a tendency to equate tech advancement directly with progress, maybe without always fully scrutinizing the welfare implications for everyone. And this mindset, while driving adoption, comes with a whole host of really profound ethical challenges.
And these aren't just abstract concerns, are they? They hit people in the real world.
Absolutely not abstract. AI isn't just creating new ethical dilemmas. It's often amplifying and transforming existing societal problems. It forces us to rethink fairness, autonomy.
Okay, give us some examples. Bias and discrimination.
A major one. We've seen AI used in credit scoring that disproportionately disadvantages minority groups, or think about fraud detection and social benefits. The Dutch childcare allowance scandal is a terrible example where an algorithm wrongly flagged thousands of families, causing immense hardship.
How does that happen? Is it the algorithm itself or the data?
Often it's the data. Large data sets, scraped from the web to train things like large language models, can contain and normalize subtle or not so subtle forms of racism and sexism, which the AI then learns and perpetuates.
That's deeply worrying. What about privacy? AI needs lots of data, right?
It does, and that creates a huge tension with privacy rights. Take Clearview AI.
The facial recognition company.
Yes, they scrape billions of images from public websites, Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it, to train their facial recognition software for law enforcement. They faced massive fines because data put online for one purpose, like sharing with friends, was repurposed for something totally different and invasive. That's function creep.
Function creep. Data collected for A ends up being used for B, C, and D without real consent.
Exactly. And beyond privacy, there's sustainability.
AI's environmental impact.
Yes. Training large models requires enormous computing power, which has a significant carbon footprint. There's also talk of data pollution, the impact of constantly processing and storing vast data sets. The argument is, if AI itself isn't sustainable, how can it genuinely help us achieve global sustainability goals?
That's a perspective you don't often hear. What else? Manipulation?
A big concern, especially with large language models. They can generate highly personalized content at massive scale. This raises fears about manipulation, political, commercial, potentially influencing choices, and undermining individual autonomy, which is fundamental for democracy.
And when things go wrong, an accident with an autonomous car, for instance, who's responsible?
That leads us straight into the responsibility gap problem. When a highly autonomous system causes harm, it can be incredibly difficult to pinpoint who, if anyone, is morally accountable.
So these huge societal impacts, they really cry out for some kind of ethical framework, don't they?
Urgently, we need robust ethical guidelines to steer AI development and use.
How is ethical thinking adapting to this? Are old philosophies enough?
Well, traditional theories like Aristotle's virtue ethics or Kant's categorical imperative are foundational, but often too abstract for direct application to specific tech problems. So there's been a shift towards what are called mid-level normative ethical theories. These are more focused on the practical implications of technology and are, frankly, easier to test and apply. A really key approach emerging now is design for values.
Design for values sounds proactive, building ethics in from the start.
That's the core idea. It argues that ethics can't be an afterthought. It has to be integrated right from the beginning of the design process. Because technology is never value neutral. It always embeds certain values, intentionally or not.
Like your example of a park bench with armrests discouraging sleeping.
Exactly. The design choice embeds a value. Similarly, AI systems embed values through their algorithms, their training data, their interfaces.
So how do you actually do that? Design for values?
It's challenging. It involves three main steps, really. First, identifying which values are relevant for a specific AI application. Second, figuring out how to technically embed those values into the system's design. And third, assessing whether you actually succeeded.
And who decides the values?
That's crucial. It needs both bottom-up input, engaging with stakeholders, the public, the people affected to understand diverse perspectives, and top-down justification from established ethical frameworks to ensure the values chosen are robust and defensible.
Okay, that makes sense. And when we talk values in AI, fairness comes up constantly. How does that fit into this design for values idea?
Fairness is absolutely central, but it's also really complex. There isn't one single definition. We can distinguish between, say, procedural fairness and substantive fairness.
Procedural versus substantive. What's the difference?
Procedural fairness focuses on the process of decision-making. Is it consistent? Is it non-arbitrary? Can a justification be provided? Substantive fairness looks at the outcome. Does the decision lead to a just distribution or societal structure? Does it avoid reinforcing historical disadvantage? Think about achieving equality of opportunity.
Like Rawls' idea of justice as fairness, designing society's rules from a fair starting point.
Exactly. Rawls' work informs that substantive view, aiming for principles that create a just basic structure for society, chosen under fair conditions. But there's another important layer, too. Relational fairness.
Relational fairness.
This focuses on how AI systems categorize and treat people, how they interact with us. These systems can cause what are called representational harms. They might generalize, misrepresent groups, or de-individualize people.
How does that cause harm?
It can interfere with our sense of self, our ability to define ourselves, our self-determination. And because AI can be so opaque, these relational harms are often harder to see and challenge.
Wow, okay. So we have these deep ethical issues, this need to design for values. Which brings us to regulation. There's often this tension presented, right? Protection versus innovation, like it's a zero-sum game.
Yes, that narrative is very common. You regulate, you stifle innovation.
Yeah.
You innovate, you risk harm.
But does it have to be that way? Can regulation actually guide innovation?
The perspective in our source material is clear. Yes, it can, and it should. Regulation can steer innovators towards developing technologies that align with societal values rather than undermining them. After all, innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum. If it erodes trust or fairness, it ultimately undermines the conditions needed for innovation itself to thrive.
That makes sense. But what about the speed issue? People always say the law can't keep up with tech, especially AI.
That's a perennial concern with any fast-moving technology, not just AI. But the experts argue the focus shouldn't just be on the speed of legislation.
What should it be on then?
The quality of the law. Is it general enough to apply to future developments? Is it flexible? Does it take a technology-neutral approach where possible, focusing on harms rather than specific tech? Or does it need to be technology-specific? A well-designed, adaptable law can be surprisingly resilient, even if the tech changes rapidly.
That's a more optimistic take. And speaking of lawmaking, the European Union has really stepped up on AI, hasn't it? Tell us about the EU AI Act.
Yes, the EU has definitely aimed to be a global leader here. They formally adopted their landmark AI Act in spring 2024.
What are its main goals?
It's ambitious. First, protect fundamental EU rights and values. Second, create a harmonized single market for AI across all member states so businesses have clear rules. And third, leverage a first-mover advantage. They hope to set a global standard, the so-called Brussels effect.
The Brussels effect, like GDPR, where EU rules become the de facto global norm.
That's the aspiration. And this act didn't appear overnight. It builds heavily on the ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI from the EU's high-level expert group back in 2019.
Ah, those guidelines laid the groundwork.
It did. They outlined 7 key requirements for trustworthy AI. Things like human agency, robustness, privacy, transparency, fairness, societal well-being, and accountability. Those principles heavily influence the act.
So how does the act actually work? How does it categorize AI?
It uses a risk-based approach, which is quite sophisticated. It creates essentially 5 tiers of AI systems, with legal obligations increasing with the level of risk.
Okay, what's at the top? The highest risk.
At the very top, you have prohibited AI. These are systems deemed to pose an unacceptable risk to fundamental rights and are simply banned.
Banned outright. Like what?
Things like using subliminal techniques to distort people's behavior in harmful ways, government-run social scoring systems that lead to detrimental treatment, also emotion recognition systems used in workplaces or schools, and importantly, the untargeted scraping of facial images from the internet or CCTV to build facial recognition databases, like the Clearview AI case we discussed.
That seems quite strong. Are there any loopholes or exceptions?
There are some very controversial exceptions, particularly for law enforcement, using real-time remote biometric identification, essentially, live facial recognition in public spaces.
That sounds risky.
It is, and it was heavily debated. It's allowed, but only under strict conditions. Requires prior judicial authorization, limited in time and scope, and only for specific serious purposes.
Such as?
Things like searching for missing persons or victims of crime, preventing an imminent terrorist threat, or identifying suspects in serious criminal investigations listed in the Act. Still, it remains a major point of concern for privacy advocates.
Okay, so that's prohibited AI, with some narrow exceptions. What's the next level down?
That's high-risk AI. This category covers AI systems used in critical domains where errors could have severe consequences for safety or fundamental rights.
Which domains are considered high risk?
The Act lists them in an annex. It includes things like AI used in education, determining access, evaluating students, in employment recruitment algorithms, performance monitoring. Also, AI in critical infrastructure, access to essential private and public services like credit scoring or emergency dispatch, law enforcement tools like risk assessment, migration control, administration of justice, and systems influencing democratic processes like voting.
So, quite a broad range of sensitive areas. What do providers of these high-risk systems have to do?
They face significant obligations. They need to implement robust quality and risk management systems, ensure high-quality training data, maintain detailed technical documentation, ensure human oversight is possible, and meet high levels of accuracy and cybersecurity.
And below high risk, are there requirements for things like chatbots?
Yes, there are specific transparency requirements for certain AI systems. For instance, AI intended to interact directly with people, like chatbots or deepfakes, generally needs to disclose that the person is interacting with an AI unless it's completely obvious from the context. Similar transparency rules apply to emotion recognition or biometric categorization systems, and AI generating text, images, or audio has labeling requirements too. There are also specific rules for general-purpose AI models, especially powerful ones.
That's a really detailed framework. But AI doesn't exist in a vacuum. How does this AI Act interact with other laws already on the books, like GDPR for privacy?
Great question. The AI Act is designed to work alongside existing laws, especially the GDPR, which is fundamental for any AI processing personal data.
Are there tensions there between AI's needs and GDPR's rules?
Definitely. We already touched on purpose limitation. GDPR says data should be collected for specific purposes and not reused incompatibly. But AI models are often trained on vast data sets gathered for various reasons, leading to that function creep concern, as seen with Clearview AI's fines under GDPR.
Right.
What else? Transparency and explainability are another key tension point. GDPR Article 22 gives people rights regarding solely automated decisions that significantly affect them, including the right to meaningful information about the logic involved.
But the black box problem makes that hard for some AI.
Exactly. Providing a truly meaningful explanation for a complex deep learning model's decision can be extremely difficult, potentially conflicting with GDPR requirements. Though the GDPR is quite flexible and principle-based, allowing for interpretation as technology evolves.
Okay, so GDPR is crucial for the data aspect. What about when AI causes actual physical harm, like a self-driving car crash or a medical AI misdiagnosis?
That falls under tort liability law, the rules governing compensation for harm. This is a big area of development. The EU has introduced new directives to address this: a revised product liability directive and a new AI liability directive.
What do these new directives do?
They aim to clarify things. The Product Liability Directive now explicitly includes software, including AI, as a product. The AI Liability Directive helps victims get compensation when harm is caused by AI systems due to fault. It introduces measures like access to evidence and a presumption of causality.
A presumption of causality, meaning
It can help claimants overcome the difficulty of proving a direct causal link between the provider's fault, like failing a duty of care, maybe by not complying with AI Act rules, and the AI's harmful output, especially given the black box issue. It shifts the burden slightly.
this brings us back to moral responsibility again. If AI is getting more autonomous, does that mean when accidents happen, maybe no one is morally to blame, that responsibility gap?
It's a persistent debate.
Yeah.
Claim is sometimes made that highly autonomous self-learning AI could create situations where no human meets the traditional conditions for moral responsibility, causal involvement, knowledge control.
So it's not just that we don't know who's responsible, but that maybe no one truly is. An ontological gap, not just epistemic.
That's the argument some make. They point to the lack of direct human control over the AI's moment-to-moment decisions.
But does that argument hold up?
Our source materials suggest, maybe not entirely. The authors argue that not having control does not necessarily absolve moral responsibility.
Can you give an example?
They use the analogy of someone with epilepsy who chooses to drive, knows the risks, and causes an accident during a seizure. They didn't control the car during the seizure, but we might still hold them responsible for the choice to drive knowing the risk.
Ah, so the responsibility lies further back. In the design, deployment, the decision to use the AI?
Precisely. The conclusion drawn is that our existing moral practices and concepts of responsibility might be more adaptable than we think. We can often find responsible human actors if we look at the design, testing, deployment, and oversight decisions. A true ontological gap might be rarer than feared.
That's reassuring in a way. Let's switch gears slightly. What about creativity and invention? Can an AI own intellectual property?
A fascinating question. IP law is traditionally very anthropocentric, centered on human creators. AI challenges that fundamentally.
Like the Davies case, where an AI was listed as the inventor on patent applications.
Exactly. Stephen Thaler's AI system, Davies, was claimed to be the inventor. Courts globally mostly rejected this, reaffirming that inventors, under current law, must be human beings. But it sparked a huge debate.
And what about ownership of stuff AI generates? If I use an AI to make art, who owns the copyright? Me, the AI company.
It's incredibly complex. You have multiple potential stakeholders: the AI developer, the person who trained the model, the user providing prompts, the investor. Current laws weren't designed for this. Plus, the black box issue again complicates proving a sufficient causal link between the human user's input and the final AI output, which is often needed for copyright claims.
And AI can also infringe on existing IP, right? By training on copyrighted material.
Yes, that's a massive area of litigation right now.
Oh.
And transparency becomes important here too. Things like the EU AI Act's requirement to watermark or label AI-generated content can help track provenance and potential infringement.
Okay, so AI shakes up liability and IP. What about competition law? Can AI help companies collude?
It seems it can facilitate new forms of anti-competitive behavior, especially through algorithmic pricing.
How so?
Algorithms used by competing firms might learn to coordinate prices without any explicit human agreement. This could be through explicit collusion programmed in, or a hub-and-spoke arrangement where a third-party platform or algorithm coordinates prices for different sellers. Or potentially even tacit collusion, where independent algorithms simply learn over time that raising prices together is mutually beneficial, achieving cartel-like outcomes without direct communication. Regulators are actively grappling with how to detect and tackle this.
Wow. Algorithms learning to cheat the market on their own. That leads nicely into consumer protection. How does AI challenge that?
AI fundamentally challenges the traditional legal benchmark of the average consumer. AI enables hyper-personalization. This allows for sophisticated choice architecture and the use of dark patterns, manipulative interface designs that exploit cognitive biases to nudge or trick users into choices they might not otherwise make, like signing up for subscriptions, sharing more data.
And because it's personalized, it's harder for regulators to spot than a single misleading advert aimed at everyone.
Precisely. Existing consumer protection laws, often based on that average consumer idea, might fall short. There's a strong argument that we need more specific regulations to address these AI-driven manipulative practices.
It's clear the EU AI Act is trying to address many of these issues head-on, but it's a huge piece of legislation. What are the big picture challenges in actually making it work effectively?
Despite its ambition, the AI Act faces significant hurdles. Critics point to potential interpretative challenges. What exactly constitutes a risk to fundamental rights? What is an acceptable residual risk for high-risk systems? These terms need clear definition in practice.
So ambiguity could be a problem.
It could. There's also heavy reliance on technical standardization to flesh out the details for high-risk systems.
Why is that a concern?
Because standards bodies are often dominated by industry actors, raising concerns about whether the standards will be rigorous enough to truly protect the public interest. And past experiences in the EU, like with self-certification for toy safety, or even third-party certification like the PIP breast implant scandal, show that these mechanisms can sometimes be weak points, allowing unsafe products onto the market. The AI Act relies heavily on conformity assessments, often done by the providers themselves, for many high-risk systems.
So enforcement and oversight could be tricky.
Potentially, yes. Plus, the Act aims for maximum harmonization across the EU.
Meaning member states can't really add stricter rules?
Largely, yes. The idea is to create a single market. But the flip side is, if the Act itself has gaps or weaknesses in protection, it might be difficult for individual countries to fill those gaps with their own national laws. It's a trade-off.
This deep dive has really shown governing AI is anything but simple. It's this incredible tangle of ancient ideas, bleeding-edge tech, and our most fundamental societal values. But really grappling with these layers, understanding them, feels absolutely crucial for all of us now, doesn't it? As AI just weaves itself deeper into our lives.
It really does. And maybe that leaves an important question for you, the listener, to think about. As AI keeps evolving, as it integrates more and more into everything we do, what responsibility do we have as informed citizens? How do we engage? How do we shape its ethical future, its legal path? How do we advocate for the kind of AI-infused society we actually want to live in?
That's a powerful thought to end on. We really hope this deep dive has given you a clearer, more informed perspective on these vital questions. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey today.